come it's not showing my face? How come it's all blurry? How do you adjust it? Like this? Aha! Just like that. Okay. Where's the chat room? Yeah, but it's like blank. How do you log in? Here we go. Why is it doing this? If you're watching this, I'm having some technical difficulties with the chat room. Hopefully that'll be resolved soon. But it's 8 o'clock, so I want to go ahead and start. Hi, I'm Rebetzin Kolakowski. I'm filling in for Rabbi Asher Meza tonight. He normally gives a class on Jewish philosophy during this 8 to 9 time slot on Thursday nights, but he is unavailable, so I'm filling in for him right now. And he asked me to speak a little bit about my conversion story. So, no problem, here I am, going ahead and speaking about that. Alright. So, I grew up in the least Jewish place in the world, which was Idaho Falls, Idaho. And I grew up in a family that were Mormons from way back, from really the beginning of the Mormon church. My great-great-grandmother traveled across the United States with a handcart and 6 children. Her husband died along the way. Yada yada. I could go on for days about my family and who they were and where they came from. But you should just know that I had a very strong Mormon upbringing, and it instilled in me a lot of values of, charity and family values, cherishing the family above all. And that's one of the really beautiful things about the Mormon faith. But as any of you who are on this channel who are Jewish believers know, it's not the truth. So, my father was, although he was very strong Mormon and he went to church every Sunday, when I was about 16 years old, he took me aside and he said, we baptized you in the Mormon church, but you should really find a faith that suits you. And, I was living in Idaho Falls, Idaho, so my options were really limited. I went to the Presbyterian church and was active in their music congregation for a long time, as I'm a musician. So that really appealed to me. I went to Hindu services. I talked with some friends who were Buddhists and tried to get into meditation. I went to Catholic services a lot with my best friend who's Catholic, and so on and so forth. So, but I never really found anything that I was like, yeah, this is totally me. I just had bits and pieces from each thing that I thought, oh, I like this or I like that, but there was no one religion that was like, yeah, that's where it's at. Let me just adjust this camera again. So pretty much, I just decided to go ahead and be a Mormon, and continue to believe in the things that I believed in, and live with the values that I lived. But I wasn't a very active Mormon. I didn't go to church on Sunday. I wasn't tithing like I was supposed to because they require that you give 10% of your income to the church. And I wasn't doing, I wasn't living a fully Mormon life, but I still believed in God, and I still believed in these values and these precepts that I held to be true. I just couldn't find a religion that had them all. So I go about living my life. I graduate from college. I'm living in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I I had planned on after college working for the company that I had worked for all during college, which was called Mother and Baby, and it was a retail clothing store for maternity all the way through toddler. It the whole goal was to take someone through their pregnancy and their children into toddlerhood. It was a great job and I loved it, and I worked there all through college. But they changed their business and they decided to shut down the Princeton branch. And there really wasn't a place for me anymore because they were downsizing their business into an embroidery business and they really only needed 2 people, so they didn't have a staff. So I basically lost my job and I was feeling really bad about it because I did not know what I was going to do. My plan was to continue working at the shop for at least a year, pay down some of my student loans. Again, I'm a musician. I went to music school. I had opportunities to perform. I was giving performances, but paying down my student loans while still working at this retail job. So I had no idea really at that point what I was going to do, whether I had no idea. And so to sort of clear my mind and get myself together, I went to Flatbush in Brooklyn to visit some friends of mine who aren't Jewish, but are very good friends of mine still. And I was on the train, I was on the Q train coming back on the subway, going back to Penn Station to catch the New Jersey Transit train back to Elizabeth. And I was crying, not like bawling crying, but crying a little bit, like just a few tears. And there was the doors opened at at one of the stations, and in walked in what I knew to be a Hasidic Jewish man. He had, payas, the curls on the sides of the face, and he had a long beard and a black hat, and he was carrying this gigantic suitcase. His wife was with him, and she had a small child with her who was a little boy. And there was 2 open seats, really. I mean, some of it was kind of bare, but there were 2 seats open. One across from me, which the Hasidic Jewish man took, and one right next to me, which the Hasidic Jewish woman took. And I let, what? She's right here. So the Hasidic Jewish woman and her child sat next to me, and she said to me, um, it was just a few minutes into the train ride, and she said to me, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Well, I'm feeling kind of sorry for myself because I lost my job and I don't know what I'm going to do and I'm trying to figure it all out." And she said, "I'm really sorry for that, and I hope that you are able to find something else or figure out your way, easily." And then she engaged me in a little conversation. She told me she was going to visit her cousin in Spring Valley who just had a baby. Nothing major. It was not a major conversation of any spiritual matter, but in the approximately 5 to 10 minutes I had with her on this train ride, she managed to totally change my life. And there was just something about her that sucked me right in. Like, her spirit was so, like, she just radiated self-confidence. She seemed content and happy. She seemed like she knew where she was going and what she wanted, and those were all things that I didn't have at that time. I didn't have self-confidence. I didn't have self-worth. I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go, and I felt very lost, and this woman seemed totally sure, and I wanted that. I really wanted what she had. So the only thing I knew about her, please stop. The only thing I really knew about her was that she was a Hasidic Jew. So I went home and I started looking up Judaism on the computer, on the internet. And I pretty much was researching Judaism all that night. And it became sort of a little private obsession that I would come home from looking for a job or collecting unemployment or whatever I was doing that day. And I would get on my computer, I would jump on my computer, and I would research Orthodox Judaism and what it meant to be a Jew and what Jews believed in. And the more I knew, the more exciting it was, and the more I wanted to know. It seemed to me that Judaism it was everything that I had wanted in a religion. It had all of the things that I believed in all in one religion, finally, and I felt like, wow, this is totally it. But I always thought, they're Jews and they're Jewish, and it's an ethnic thing, and like I can't be Jewish. Like, I'm me, and I wasn't born Jewish, and they're them, and they're Jewish, and that's it. But I continued to learn every night. Again, it was like a kind of a secret obsession. And I was writing about my, what I was learning about Judaism, and really, just really connecting to it. So, years go by, not years, like probably 6 months went by, and I had, been researching and learning about Judaism pretty much every night. And then I got really sick, and I was in the hospital for some time. I had an operation. And I was in the sort of hospital where you're sharing a room with somebody and then they just have the curtain that you draw. Well, I got really lucky because the lady who was in the room with me was a really cool person, and she was very sharing, very caring, and she was just very open. So we had a lot of good conversations. Joe, can you come get the baby? We had a lot of good conversations, and it came around time for Sukkot, the festival of Sukkot, and she, I mean, I saw a little blurb about it on TV on the news, and she mentioned to me that growing up, her family lived next door to some Jewish people who celebrated Sukkot, and what it was all about. And they built a little hut in the back of their yard, and they had parties every night, and it was seemed really festive, and and I was like, wow, that sounds so good. I mean, in my head I was thinking, wow, that sounds so good. And our conversation somehow, and I can't really remember how it happened, but it somehow got around to the actor Sammy Davis Jr. And she said, oh, Sammy Davis Jr. is a Jew. What, sweetheart? You want to color? Sure. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He's not Jewish. He's a black guy. And she's like, no, he converted. And at that point, my world stopped turning. I was like, you can convert to Judaism? I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I didn't know you could convert. I thought, they're Jewish and I'm not Jewish, and near the twain shall meet. But when she told me that Sammy Davis Jr. converted and there was a possibility of conversion, I lost it. I lost my mind. I was like, really? I gotta have this. I gotta look into this. I gotta get out of this hospital bed, and I gotta get on my road to becoming a Jew. So, I eventually recovered, and I had my operation and everything. I got better, and I went back home to Elizabeth. And I knew that Orthodox Jews needed to live. And what's funny is I never really was drawn to the Reform tradition or the conservative tradition. Even though I know Sammy Davis Jr., I think he converted conservative. Don't quote me on that, but I think he did. I'm sorry, guys. My baby is totally crying. No. Don't use those envelopes, okay? You can use this one. Here. Basically, I got home and I knew, and I wanted to follow the Orthodox path. For some reason, I wasn't drawn to Reform tradition or conservative tradition. And while I was learning for my conversion, a friend of mine actually took me to a Reform synagogue, and I was like, get me out of here for Friday night services. It was crazy. So, I didn't connect to it at all, but the Orthodox religion and Torah Judaism really was what I wanted, and it really struck a chord with me. So I knew that an observant Jew needed to live in the neighborhood of the synagogue so that they could walk, not only so that they could walk on the Sabbath, but so that they could be a part of the community at large. And it just so happened when I started doing my research about where the nearest Orthodox synagogue was and how far I would have to move, that I lived in a community. I lived in the Eruv of the big Elizabeth Shul, which is it's a very big and very influential Orthodox shul in Elizabeth, and it was about a mile and a drop, probably like a mile and 3/4 away from, or maybe a mile and a half away from the shul. So I was like, wow, I can I can walk to shul. I'm right here. I don't have to worry about this. I could have a rabbi right here. And so I feel like, Hashem really benched me and blessed me with that opportunity that I could live in that neighborhood. And so I decided to go to shul on one Shabbos morning. And I had no idea what I was doing. But I went, and I knew I had to go to the women's section. So I asked somebody, where's the women's section? And they told me, and I went upstairs, and I was totally inappropriately dressed, fine. But they were still really nice to me, thank God. There was a really nice little old lady who sat with me, and I explained to her, I actually told her that I was a Baal Tshuva, which means someone that was born Jewish, but like fell off of the path of observance, but it was coming back on. I told her that I was a Baal Tshuva because I did not know what the word for what the word ger or gioris or convert was. So I told her I was a Baal Tshuva, and she said, oh, no problem. And she showed me where to start davening, and they had Siddurim in English, and I followed. It's not so much I followed along. I davened a little bit, and then I just sort of watched what was going on. And I was also really touched and really influenced by the laning on Shabbos, by the carrying of the Torah around the synagogue, and then when they brought it up to the bima and they started to read the parsha for the week. And it's in a language that's totally foreign. It's a language I don't understand, and I was feeling like, wow, I totally don't belong here. But also, part of me felt like I have never belonged more in any place in my life. I just felt you know, like a puzzle piece had clicked together. Like that was the last missing puzzle piece of my life, and that was it. And even though I felt weird, I at the same time I still felt like, yeah, this is me. This is where I'm supposed to be. So I made an appointment with the rabbi. His name is Rabbi Elazar Teitz, and he's not active. He doesn't claim that he's active in the rabbinate, but he's still very, very influential and very, very big guy, not only in the Elizabeth community but in the Torah world at large. And I made an appointment to speak with him. I did not know that what a big rabbi he was when I went there, but I was very fortunate that he was the first one that I talked to. And he did his usual, the usual thing where they try to dissuade you and remind you of the Holocaust and blah, 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 and all that stuff they're supposed to do. But he saw that I was really, really serious, and I think he could read that in my demeanor. And I came in again, not totally immodestly dressed, but pretty inappropriately dressed for a Jewish person. And he was so kind to me, and he said, if you want to be a Jew, he said, I can't really help you learn for your conversion because I'm retiring from the rabbinate and I'm expecting this other new rabbi to come in. But if you want to be a Jew, you have to start dressing like a Jew. And here's how to do it. And on that day, he explained to me the laws of tznius and the laws of modesty and how a Jewish woman should dress. And from that point on, I only wore skirts, I only wore long sleeves, and I strive to have a high neckline, as high neckline as possible. Um, my style, and my tznius level did evolve, and is still evolving over the course of my being a Jew and learning to be a Jew. Um, as we do with anything, we learn more and we do more and we take more upon ourselves. But I started to dress like a Jew, like a Jewish woman would dress, and I knew that was the first step. So the next step, he told me, was I got to get myself a rabbi, someone to learn with me so I can go to the Beis Din and have a conversion. He did explain to me a little bit of the process of conversion, so I knew that I would need to find, someone who was going to be with me every step of the way. And this was an adventure. I had 3 months, about 3 months, where and I'm not kidding you, I lived in the New York metropolitan area, so you can imagine how many rabbis and how many shuls there are in that area. I went to every rabbi I could to ask them to help me. I mean, this was after I spoke to the rabbi who was filling in for Rabbi Teitz, who was going to be coming in his place, and he basically told me, I'm just new to this congregation. There's nothing I can really do to help you. So, basically, I went to just a bunch of different rabbis, and they were all really gracious. And I have to give I have to have Hakir Satov, or be very thankful to them and give honor to them for spending any of their time with me at all. And they were all very accommodating, and they all said, I don't have time to learn with you, or I don't do that, or you should go see this person or that person. So um, that was really tough. I mean, to hear, you know, no so many times, but I was persistent. I was not going to mess around. So I was sitting in the Dunkin' Donuts, the kosher Dunkin' Donuts in Elizabeth, New Jersey one day, having a sandwich and a cup of coffee. And I was reading the Jewish State, which is like was like a Jewish newspaper that covers pretty much every aspect of Judaism in that area, in the northern Jersey area. And it was around Shavuos time, and there was a list of synagogues, and one of the synagogues that was listed was Hasidic, and it said it was in Westfield, which was 2 towns over. And I said, "There's a Hasidic synagogue in Westfield," because I remembered, the woman that sat next to me on the train and her husband were Hasidic, and I thought, man, that's maybe I can really connect to that, and maybe they'll be able to help me. I don't know. So I took my best friend, who's not Jewish, and we went for Leil Shavuos learning. I mean, on Shavuos night, everybody learns. Well, you try to stay up all night and learn, getting yourself ready to, in honor of receiving the Torah, which is the celebration of Shavuos. Um, so I went to the, quote unquote, all night learning session, which ended about 9, and the rabbi, it was a kind of a small group, probably like 15 people, and of course the rabbi noticed us, and he made a beeline for us as soon as he saw us, and said, "Hello, my name is Rabbi Levi Block. Welcome to Union County Torah Center. How are you? Who are you? What's your story?" And I just told him, like, I'm not Jewish, but I believe in Judaism, and I want to be a Jew, and I want to convert, and I'm really serious, and I've learned a lot, but I need someone who can really learn with me, who can teach me everything I need to know, who can guide me every step of the way, and then I can go to the Beis Din, someone who will help me get to the Beis Din. And he said, "Well, I've got time, I'll learn with you." And it was like, whew, such a big relief to hear him say that. I was thrilled. And so that began my relationship with the Block family and Union County Torah Center. And for the next probably 6 to 8 months, I was attached at the hip to Rebetzin, to my Rebetzin. She took me in the kitchen on Shabbos and showed me how to serve food on Shabbos so that I wasn't breaking the laws of Shabbos in the kitchen. She helped me learn the halachas of Shabbos. She helped me learn the halachas of kashrus. She showed me how to get through Pesach. She showed me pretty much everything that I needed to know. And Rabbi Black was there for spiritual support and um, emotional support. When things got crazy and I was like, what should I do? He was there. But I still don't have a Beis Din. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I this is this is sort of where the story takes an interesting turn, and we get to the internet plays a big part in this story, and I recognize that there's a lot of bad on the internet, but this story also proves that there's a lot of good. And before I found my rabbi, I was really desperate. I was going to different rabbis every day, and they're all telling me no. So I wrote an ad on Craigslist, and I said, I need an Orthodox Jewish person to help me figure out what to learn. I don't know what to do. And this yeshiva boy wrote to me from Queens, and he said, I can help you. Why don't you check out this book? And he gave me a really nice, thorough email telling me about himself and asking me some questions. And yeah, I didn't say in the ad if I was a man or a woman, so I think he was a little surprised when he found out I was a girl. but I don't think the poor kid probably thought, uh-oh, I'm doing something wrong. But it was all L'Shem Shemayim. And he guided me on different things to read, and he told me different rabbis to go and talk to and get brachas and receive a blessing from them and so on and so forth. So one night it was Saturday night, and he called me and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Well, not much. Why?" And he said, "There's a Rebetzin from Israel who needs a ride from Brooklyn to Great Neck, which is how far is that, Joe? Like an hour and a half, 45 minutes. It's a hike." So I said, "Well, I'm not doing anything. I'll take her." And so I drove the Rebetzin and her daughter over to Great Neck, and she was there to be with her husband for the Malava Malka, the Matzi Shabbos Tish, which is like a big party with food and drink, and he was giving away brachas, and he was meeting with people on an individual basis to give them advice. And we spoke briefly, and she was really, really interesting and very, very friendly, and she said, "I want you to meet my husband." And I said, "Sure, no problem." So I sat down to write a kvitzel, which is basically where you write down your Jewish name on this piece of paper so that they know who you are and what you need to, what you're requesting the blessing for, or what they need to pray for. And she says, "So what's your Hebrew name?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not Jewish." And her jaw hit the floor. She was like, "You're not Jewish? Then you must speak to my husband." So I went in to see her husband, and I was terrified. I was shaking in my boots, and he said, "My wife tells me that you want to be Jewish." And I said, "Yes, I'd like to convert to Judaism." And he said, and he basically tried to dissuade me. And he wasn't soft about it. I mean, he was pretty hardcore. And at one point he said, "Don't you realize that 6 million Jews died just because they were Jewish?" And I slammed my fist on the table and I said, "Don't you realize that I feel the pain of every single one of those Jews myself? And it pains me that there was nothing I could do about it." And he said, "Okay, that's it. I'm going to talk to somebody for you." And his name is Rabbi Parrot Steinberg, and he's in Queens. And I'm going to call you, and I'll let you know. I'll have my assistant call you and let you know when you need to go and see him. I went and visited Rabbi Steinberg. He said, "You come very highly recommended from the Biala Rebbe from Bnei Brak, who was the Rebbe that I visited on that day with his wife. And he says that you're serious." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And I told him my story. And he said, "I'll be your besdin. Let me know when you're ready." And it wasn't too much later that Rabbi Block said, "I think you're ready. I think it's time to start getting ready to go to the Besdin." And that was even a whole process in and of itself. It took another couple of months before I was really able to get even my preliminary interview with the Besdin. So I got my preliminary interview, and at the end, they basically, at that preliminary interview, just asked me about my history, about my family, how they felt about my conversion to Judaism, which, by the way, is an amazing story. That my mother, she found out that I was converting because I was in the hospital for another time, same problem, different operation, and I had requested a kosher meal. And they called her and they said, "We just want to accommodate your daughter. What sort of hechshers do you eat?" And blah, blah, blah. She was like, "What is this? A kosher meal?" So she called me, and I was like, "Oh, the cat's out of the bag," because I didn't plan on telling her until after the conversion. And she said, "I knew something was up," but she was actually really supportive and really great about it, and has been ever since. So I feel very blessed, because I know some of my friends who are converts have not been so lucky. Their parents have not been supportive, and it's been really hard for them. Their family. But thank God, everyone in my family's been really, really supportive and great. And I have to have Hakar Satov and honor them and say, thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for such a great family, because it was really a blessing. It was really, really nice to have their well wishes in this. So after my preliminary interview with the Besdin, at the end of it, after they asked me about my background and my history and my family and how they felt about it, they said, "When do you want to go to the mikvah?" I couldn't believe it. I said, "Really? When do I want to go to the mikvah? Wow, this is it. This is like right here. I can't. It's amazing." What? Yeah, it was like 3 years after, the night on the train with the lady. So I thought it would never come. It seemed like the longest 3 years of my life. And Hanukkah was coming up, so I told them after Hanukkah. And so 2 days after Hanukkah, on Daled Taivas, 5 years ago, I did my conversion. I went to the mikveh in Queens. I went by myself. The mikveh lady was there. The Bezdin showed up, and that's when they asked me the questions on halacha to make sure that I knew what I was getting into. They asked me about Shabbos. They asked me about kosher. They asked me about the Animamin, or sort of the articles of faith. What do Jews believe? What do Jews believe that's different from the rest of the world? And did I know how to daven? So on and so forth. And I answered their questions, but I was shaking. I thought, oh, this is it. They could turn me away right now. And then they said, okay, it's time to get ready. I got ready to go to the mikveh, and I went into the mikveh. It was a very, very steep downward. I mean, if you've ever been in the mikveh in Queens, it's like really steep downward to go in. And then I heard Rabbi Simon. Besdin was behind me, so they could just see my head go in. And I heard Rabbi Steinberg, who was the Av Besdin, who was the one that I went to see about, converting. He said, he has this gravelly voice. I said, you can't turn back now, little girl. And I said, yeah, I know. And he said, okay, then let's do it. And I did it. I toiveled. I went down under the water and I made the bracha. And it's funny because after I got out of the water, and they were I could hear them in the other room singing. I I really did feel like a different person immediately. Like, as soon as I got out of the water, I felt different and I felt relieved. And I know I'm leaving parts out of the story, but it's so hard to like go back and remember it. I need to backtrack though and tell you that shortly before I met with Rabbi Block, I had the opportunity to go to the. I had a recommendation from this yeshiva boy that I had been talking to online, that I should go. I was on my way to upstate New York, and he said I should stop in Monroe and go to the kever, to the grave of the old Satmar Rebbe, the Divriol. And Laser Wolf's asking me, is that verbatim what he said? Yes, it's verbatim. I'll never forget it. So I had the opportunity to go to the kever of the Divriol, and I drove up on the women's side, and it was a really, really foggy day, and I could barely see anything. It was hard for me to get there. I had to ask a woman for directions, like a whole thing. I drive up on the women's side, and I see all these signs like, don't come in here without covered hair, and, don't come in here with your stockings, if you have thin stockings on. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't go in there. This is crazy. I can't go in there. And then I was like, I was like, come on, this is crazy. Just get out of the car and go in. No one's here. It's super foggy. No one can see to go in. So I walked, and it seemed like the longest walk in the world. It's probably 300 feet from the parking lot entrance to where the actual grave is, and it seemed like forever. I was just walking. Don't draw on the chair. Go draw on the paper. You want paper? Here. So I'm walking this walk, the walk of fame, and going into the women's side at the. Everything's in Hebrew letters. I don't read Hebrew at this point. I'm looking around. I don't know what to say. I know I'm supposed to pray, but I don't know what to pray. And I just sort of like thought, I don't know, it was like a little prayer from my heart, and I said, Hashem, help me to know what to do in this holy place. And all of a sudden, like, words just came into my mouth, and I started praying for things I didn't even know I wanted. And it was just, I had this just amazing spiritual experience. And it sounds so trite now when I say it, because you can't really put spiritual things into physical words. There aren't words for it. But I'll tell you that when I left the grave that day, I had turned from a girl who really wanted to be Jewish and was doing everything she could to be Jewish to a girl who had to be Jewish. There was no choice for me anymore. I had to do it. And I persisted and I persisted. So after the Besdin, after I converted and I was running around giving tzedakah all day and keeping kosher, and I was like, now this all counts. I couldn't believe it. I even got into a little car accident because I was just so like excited. But thank God it was just a little scratch on someone's bumper, nothing big. I heard from this yeshiva boy that had been helping me, and it turns out that the whole time the Biala Rebbe had been telling him, wait on a shidduch, wait on a potential marriage partner, because I think this girl who's going to convert is a good shidduch for you. And so 40 days after my conversion, he and I got engaged at the Biala Shul in Borough Park, and we're married now, and we have two great kids. We've been married for 4 years, and I can't believe that I'm here looking back on all of this 5 years later. I never thought it would ever happen. So, and I really feel blessed, and I really am grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, first of all, for the challenge, because the challenge makes me appreciate, every day being a Jew, even when it gets hard, and it's hard every day. But just for the opportunity, and for Gerus, and for and for the Torah, it's really it really is a tree of life for those who cling to it. And anyway, that's my story. And I'm sorry I got a little emotional and I was like here and there and everywhere, all over the place in the story. But I have about 20 minutes left, and I'd love to open it up for. I'm sure you guys have questions, so please feel free to ask me. I know some of you are in the process of conversion. If you have any questions about where you're at, or what you should be doing, or who you need to talk to, or if you have any questions for me about what I did, or where I learned, or what my process was, please feel free to ask me now, because I am happy to answer those questions. Yeah, blessed is the word. I'm extremely blessed, and Hashem blesses me every day. I can't thank him enough for everything that he does for me and for my family and for really every Jew the world over. Okay, so please feel free to ask questions. I am here to answer them. I'm sure that you have questions. So Laser Wolf says, earlier on in the conversation, Laser Wolf said wearing shaitels is avodah zara. And it's interesting that you should talk about wearing shaitels, because for a long time when I was like thinking about conversion, I thought, oh, when I get married, I'm going to wear a wig. When I get married, I'm going to wear a wig. And I'll be straight up with you that my Rebetzin, she's Lubavitch, and she wears a wig, and I really hold her in the highest level of modesty. She's a very, very modest person. She dresses great. She always looks amazing, but she's very modest. And so I always thought, yeah, that I'm going to wear a wig. It's fine. That's what I'm going to do. And then I tried a wig on, and I looked like a fool. It just didn't look like me. And, I had been reading, this was after my experience at the Satmar Rebbe's grave, and I had been reading about what he said about sheitlach, and, and I thought, well, this isn't for me. I'm going to be a spitzel girl. And a spitzel is really like, it's kind of like a wig. It's a wig top, and it has like a little piece of some little threads, or sometimes it's cloth in the front that looks like hair. And when I didn't realize I thought you could just go to a store and buy these things. I didn't realize, I mean, I wasn't Jewish, and I had somebody helping me, but, preparing for my wedding, we were sort of like, yeah, I was Jewish, and I was really late in the game getting ready for my wedding, honestly. So I thought, oh, I could just go into the store and buy a spitzel, but I didn't realize that it has to be like fitted to your head and custom made. So my friend, um, my friend was like, oh, I will quickly make you an emergency appointment with this spitzelmacher in Monroe. And Monroe is like 45 minutes away from where I was living. So I went up there, and poor lady was like, I don't know what to do with you. Your wedding's in 2 weeks, and you got to have this. So she just so happened that she had a return of a spitzel that she thought might suit me, and it actually fit me pretty well. It was a drop big and kind of uncomfortable on my ears. So at some point a couple of summers ago, I just stopped wearing it and started wearing a tichel full time. And sometimes I wear my spitzel if I want to dress up or look a little bit nicer. So, but that's sort of my evolution of how I started wearing a tichel and a spitzel, and why I did it instead of wearing a wig. So that's that story. Any other questions or any other comments about this crazy story? Feel free to ask me anything. You can ask me about my background, about how I grew up Mormon, about my family, um, about my husband. My husband has an amazing story. He's a Baal Tshuva. Um, he became religious after his bar mitzvah, and basically what happened was his he was in Hebrew school, and his Zadie asked him to recite the Manishtana by the four questions at the Passover Seder, and he was having a hard time with it. And his grandfather said, like, there's no way he's going to be ready for his bar mitzvah if he can't do the Manishtana. It's coming up really quick. So he gave him a tape on how to make an aliyah, what to say for an aliyah in Hebrew and all that sort of stuff. Well, my husband was like, this is it. This is bar mitzvah. This is so easy. I can do this. And it was so easy, in fact, that he decided to do more and investigate more and keep more mitzvahs. And, he was really assisted and aided by his grandfather, who was a tremendous tzaddik. He told me a story about he was going back to upstate New York from Queens to visit his family, and because he had been visiting his grandmother and his grandfather, and his grandfather gave him $100 to buy kosher food, and he said, "Don't tell anybody I did this, but this is for you to buy kosher food." And he said, he told me a story once that he had one challah, and he didn't know about lechem mishnah, or having two loaves on the Shabbos table for each Shabbos meal, and so on and so forth. So he had one challah, and he would just like take a tiny little bit off of it for each meal and to wash, and take a little bit of challah to make hamoitzi, and then he would put it back in the freezer after every Shabbos. And when I heard that, I just imagined this 14-year-old boy, 15-year-old boy, whatever, who's so dedicated to Yiddishkeit that he's eating this tough, stale, frozen bread, but he doesn't care because it's kosher. And every time I think of that story, it makes me cry. Like the amount of dedication that he had to, being a Jew and to being Torah observant is in a household that was honestly very hostile towards that. It's really remarkable and really incredible. And again, we're very blessed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the strength to do that. But he's one of my heroes. My husband, he's a good one. What, sweetheart? Okay. So, anybody have any questions? Got like 15 minutes. You can ask anything. My daughter is drawing on me. Oh. If you want to read more about this story, there's a book out called Women Talk. It's published by Art Scroll, and I'll type that in. It's a really amazing book. And it's about all sorts of remarkable Jewish women and their stories, and my story happens to be in there. So if you want to ever check out that book, it's great. The women that are in the book are way, 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 way more inspiring than me. Another thing that you should check out if you're interested in hearing people's stories coming from a non-observant background, whether it be from totally not Jewish or a secular Jewish background, it's called so what's that show called with Sarah Rigler and Rebetzin? I can't remember the name of it now. Wouldn't you know? What? Inspired. It's called Inspired. And there's a women's version and a men's version, and they're both amazing. And they're just different people talking about their experiences coming into Torah observance. Sarah Yocheved Rigler, I don't know, I know a lot of you guys are in my kosher class on Tuesday nights. I spoke about her a lot this week, and she's actually tells her story on the Inspired movie, which is just amazing that someone could be, you know, from an ashram in India and be there for 15 years and then decide they want to be a Torah observant Jew. It's pretty crazy. It's amazing. So I am going to wait about 5 more minutes for questions, and then I will let you guys take a little break, get a snack, whatever you got to do. And my husband's going to come on and teach his class, which is about Hasidus and the Parsha, for an hour. And that's from 9 to 10. And it's always a good class. And I'm not just saying that because he's my husband. He gives a really thorough and fun class on Hasidus and the Parsha. What do you want, cutie? Okay, so about 5 more minutes for questions. And don't be shy. Feel free to ask me anything. Anybody? No, don't color on your head. My daughter is trying to color on everything tonight. Not on the chair either. Everything but paper is what she wants to color on. Okay. About 3 or 4 more minutes. Steven says, sounds like you went through quite unusual refusal. I was very frustrated at the time. I wasn't mad, and I wasn't, angry at the Jews or the Jewish people or the rabbis even. I just felt like, where am I going to go? And what am I supposed to do? Because I want to convert and no one's helping me. And this is me. I was living in a really, really richly Orthodox area. I mean, the New York City area, Elizabeth is about 8 miles from Brooklyn. So I had my choice of who to go to, and everyone was turning me away. But you know what? I think it's good, because I could have said, you know what, this isn't even worth it, throw my hands up. So it was a blessing from Hakadosh Baruch Hu. It was a blessing from Hashem that I had to be persistent, and I had to follow through for those 3-4 months, and I had to go through all of this to get to Rabbi Block, to get to the people that were going to help me. And you know what? And when I got to them, it was like, yeah, finally, Okay, Brenda asked, what do you do when you send a rabbi many emails and he doesn't even respond? Brenda, again, don't be upset with the rabbi. Don't feel frustrated with the rabbi. Everything is from Shemayim. Everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's doing it all for a reason. Maybe that's not the right rabbi for you. And maybe through the refusal of this rabbi not answering your emails is going to lead you to the rabbi who is going to help you. And I would just say, look for more different rabbis. Do your research. Look online. You could always write to me. I will give you my email address. I know some of you guys are friends with me on Facebook, and that's great. I will totally feel free to private Facebook message me, and I'll get back to you. But I would just say, Brenna, don't be frustrated, because it's all from Shemayim. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling, sort of guiding you. Sometimes when doors are slammed in your face, it's because you need to open the door that needs to be opened is down the hall a little bit. So just don't feel frustrated. Keep doing your research. Keep learning what you need to learn. Keep watching classes and getting books. And if you get confused or you need help, please contact me. I'm happy to help you. And sometimes they're just busy. I don't think it's personal. Sometimes they're just really busy and they just don't have time to answer an email. And don't get frustrated with them. Hashem has some sort of plan for you. He has some sort of door that's going to be open, and it will be open very soon. I'll tell you guys a funny story. Please feel free to put your questions up while I tell the story. Coming from a really non-Jewish background where we believed in like the devil or the evil side, I remember I was sitting in my bedroom feeling so frustrated in the middle of trying to find a rabbi, and I wanted to keep Shabbos so bad. I wanted to be a Jew, and it was making me nuts. And I actually said, "Goyish devil." I said this out loud. I was like, "I don't believe in you, but I would sell my soul to you if you would just let me be Jewish." Like, that's the level of desperation I was feeling. And I didn't really believe in it, and I felt sort of silly to say it, but you know what? I was grasping at straws, and I was willing to talk to anybody, real or imagined, who would listen. So don't feel frustrated. At the end of it, you're gonna look back and you'll be like, wait a minute, that's what I went through? Really? It doesn't even seem that bad now. And there are greater challenges that you face when you become a Jew, and when and when you finally go to the mikveh, it's like you get a Yetzer Hara, and the story's just beginning. The mikveh is just the beginning. It's definitely not the end of the story by any means. Okay, any other questions? I'm going to give you guys 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I'll turn you loose for a snack break, and then my husband will come and give his class. Okay, about 45 more seconds for questions. Any question at all. Again, it's fair game. Anything you want to ask me, I'm here to answer. And I'm messing up my camera. There we go. Okay, guys. With that, I'm going to turn you loose for a little break. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and listening to my story. I really appreciate it. If you ever have any questions, again, you can email me at millie.hayes@gmail.com, or you can Facebook me, Melissa Hayes Kolakowski. I am absolutely happy to answer any questions. And if you send me a little note on Facebook like, hey, you know me from the classes, because I had my Facebook hacked into, and I don't just friend anybody anymore because that was crazy. So with that, I will let you guys have a snack break, and we'll meet you back here in a few minutes for my husband's class. Thank you so much. Have a great night.